Hi, thank you. Welcome to What's Troubling You with Chantel and Charlene. And
Hi.
here today, we have a great topic, especially for the month of February. Chantel?
Yes, we are going to be talking about love this month. And we have my colleague, Miss Janjura Robbins. Jan, you want to tell them about yourself?
Hello, my name is Ginger Robbins, and I am a graduate of Texas Wesleyan University from the MFT program. Chantel and I actually are LAMFT associates in New Mexico, and we hold our LCDCI license in Texas. So we have been on a journey together, and it's still continuing.
Yes, and it is.
And so my focus is trauma when working with clients, various amounts of trauma, but also marriage and family therapy, and hopefully soon to be sex therapy, but we're working on that one.
Yes, we are. Okay, so my first question for you is, since we're talking about love, why don't you give a definition of what love is?
So I always have to come from the biblical stance of what the Bible calls love. And so in the Bible, I have to make sure I have my paperwork so I don't get it mixed up. There are really four forms of love. There's eros, uh, storge, agape, and philia, which is, okay, so storge is family love. Eros is romantic love. Agape is divine love. And phileo is brotherly love. So if we go by the Bible stance, those are the 4 points of love. And it just means to have a bond, a relationship, a reciprocal relationship between consenting adults to join in common relationships. That's what love is. Now, the world love generally is going by the physical contact, the sex, generally driven by sex and all the chemistry that happens in the body during sex, the dopamine that's released, the melatonin that's released, the serotonin that's released. And a lot of people think that's love, but that's actually a physical chemical attraction like addiction, drugs. So if we're really going to the basic premise of biblical love, 4 types, and it all is various romantic love between husband and wife, brotherly love, things of that nature.
So is love an emotion or a feeling? What do you?
I would have to say that it can be both. It is a feeling and an emotion. Because if we look at the emotional component that's internal, and it is based on your environment, your upbringing, what you see, what you believe, subjective, what you believe, what makes you happy, what makes you feel loved, what makes you feel accepted, safe, secure. However, it can be physical. If you go through the chemistry of it, there are cuddle sessions that create these endorphins in your body and create this idea of love. So it can just be the physical aspect, because these chemicals are released through touch, through emotion, through trauma. It's all based in the same parts of the brain. So you have your amygdala, you have your, I would forget this. In the brain, there's like the amygdala, the pleasure principle of the brain, the pleasure center of the brain. And all these things are wired together. So your middle forebrain, you have the ventricle, the nucleus accumbens. I'm not a chemistry, I'm not a neurologist. Let me say that first and foremost. But you have all these things in the brain that make you think love is real.
Right.
But also we have to remember that we have a lot of people in this world that like to manipulate love. And they step in and it's like, okay, I'm going to manipulate these situations to make you feel a certain way. And then we call it love. But it's so important that we know our self-worth, we know ourselves, have a self-esteem, and understand that we can be manipulated because based on these chemistries, and always know why you want love and what love looks like to you personally.
Right.
Very
So
good.
I have a question on based on what you just said. Can we distinguish the difference between intimacy and love?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it is again subjective.
Okay.
So you have, the Chapman has the 5 love languages, and he talks about, physical touch, the giving of gifts, the time. So for me, I like time, and I like time with my husband. I like him to spend that quality time. He likes touch. So we have to distinguish that his love language is touch, mine is time. So if we're spending time together and I touch him, then he's like emotionally in love, but then he gets aroused. I mean, please forgive me if I go too far, but he gets aroused. But I have to let him know in that moment, it is important for me just to have that quality time. So again, we have to know self. We have to know what our love language is. And we also have to know what the other individual's love language is, so we don't just fall into the emotions. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
let me just kind of piggyback off what you just said again, because you said something else that kind of triggered my thoughts when you brought up about the amygdala. And so as we know, the amygdala is that entryway where when we have people who have had trauma, that's the entryway that it gets back in our thought process that something on the outside has happened and goes through the hippocampus, which it releases all those thoughts, right,
Mhm.
of the past. So even in a traumatic relationship, not so much love, but something that has happened traumatically, do you think that that also is what kind of triggers that false sense of, oh, I want to, it's something that's good, but it's really not good?
Absolutely, because those things are wired. The neurons that are wired together, they fire together. Henry Laborit, Labor, Laborit, in 1970 coined the term BSI, and he talks about how the fight or flight syndrome can be equated to love because of trauma.
That's interesting.
Um,
That's interesting.
and so certain behaviors, smells, things of that nature that trigger, it'll either cause, in a love situation, can cause you to fight or flight or freeze or submit. So absolutely, those things, where those neurons are connecting and associating to one another, it can mask as love. Those
Wow.
emotions can be masked as love. So we have to keep in mind, again, that's why you have to be self-aware. You have to know what you want in a love relationship
Right.
and know what your boundaries are. Because if you don't, you'll settle for anything, and then you'll be manipulated.
Now, I want to ask you, you were speaking on manipulation. So how do they know if they're being manipulated? What are some signs and what should they look for?
Okay, so Bowen always goes back to differentiation of self. When I was going to school, I was so enthralled in the theory of Bowen therapy. It's not a therapy, it's a theory. But
I like Bowen too.
Differentiation of self. It is important to know who you are and who you're engaging with. A lot of times we're manipulated because we don't even know who we are. We can be manipulated in the world, we can be manipulated in the church, because we don't know who we are or even what our purpose is. I do believe that we are supposed to submit to certain things that God leads us to, and really those assignments that are ours, we are supposed to be willing to submit and be comfortable with God taking us down that road. We trust God, not always the situation, but we trust God when we know what our purpose is and what our assignments are.
Right.
With that being said, you don't know self, you don't know your purpose, you don't know what your assignment is, you will be manipulated. Did that answer the question?
Yes. So what is love bombing?
Oh, I can look this one up because that one was new to me. I don't think it's an oxymoronic statement. Love bombing. When somebody just rushes you and they want all your time, all your energy, everything that you have, that's considered love bombing. When I looked it up, it was talking about, I need you to call me every 5 minutes. I need to be in your presence. I need to do everything that I need you to do, everything that I want you to do. And we call that love. That is not love. Love bombing is a form of manipulation.
Mhm.
It's a narcissistic behavior that someone adapts to control you. It is very toxic. And it's a form of control. It's also a form of abuse.
Right.
I believe that my husband and I are equally yoked in a lot of ways. And we love each other. But I don't want him in my face 24/7. I just don't. I mean, I when he leaves the room and he's put on his lotion to go to work and he smells good, I'm like, okay, I'll see you when you get back. I don't need that in my face every 24 hours. Love bombing can be very it's codependent.
Yeah.
It can be codependent. It can be suffocating and abusive. I've been in those relationships, so I know for sure it causes trauma. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And sometimes we understand that with reading that book, you understand that trauma is created by those wounds that have never been healed. So when you come into these love bombing relationships and you think it's affection and love, it's masked with that trauma.
Right.
Because we can't break away from that. And people don't want you to break away. They want to hold you captive. You become a slave to whatever they're giving you because you accept it.
Because you don't know who you are.
Yeah.
All right. So what are some signs that your mate is feeling you? Like if y'all just first dating and you like him and you think he likes you, but you're not sure. And how do you know?
I believe your mate there's just chemistry. Back in the old days, they used to say, we smelling each other. And somebody walks in the room and you are already emotionally connected in some way. But they walk in the room and you get the butterflies, you get the warm fuzzies, that's not clinical terms, but you get all that. And they constantly want to talk to you. They want to be engaged in a healthy way. They respect you and your terms of your environment, but they want to be connected with you in a healthy way. And you feel that respect. Yeah. I think that's when somebody's feeling you. A little soft text throughout the day, and it's not, I text you and I demand you to text me back. I've read your text. I know that you've read my text because I have this read on and you haven't texted me back in like 10 minutes or an hour. That's not it. But when they're just feeling, hey, I'm just thinking about you. Hope your day is going good. And you feel it as well. I think when you really know somebody's feeling you and you want it, you can feel them as well.
I have a question. When in a relationship, right? Because on the same line that you're talking about now, when in a relationship, when is it the right time to tell the person that you love them?
It's really good. I think the art of conversation has been lost through the internet and social media. I do believe that when you're in a really healthy relationship and we have social cues, we have body language, we have all these different things, and you spend some time with somebody, you know when the right time is to say, I love you. It's different for everybody. I think more mature women who know what they want and mature men who know what they want. It could be sooner than later. Yeah. I believe in the body of Christ. we get married to date, you know, and we develop this love relationship based on common grounds and common understandings.
Mhm.
So it varies from person to person. This is not a monolith. Love is not a monolith of a body of people who say this is how love is. I
Right.
think when you find someone that you can communicate, look into the eyes and say, look, this is where I am, good, bad, and indifferent, and they agree with that, and you're both equally looking for love, you know when it's time. It could be 3 months, check their credit though. It could be a year.
Check the credit. Okay. Check the credit. Okay.
You gotta check their credit. Because
Okay.
you don't want a whole lot of other baggage too. Or maybe you do. I think sometimes we fall in love and we forget that love is fleeting.
Good.
And you have all that baggage that comes along with it.
Right.
And I'm not saying don't fall in love with someone that has baggage. I'm saying, are you prepared? Are you strong enough to be open about their baggage, your baggage, and walk it out? Develop a plan. This is what we're going to do with that plan, and make sure that you both are sincere enough to abide by that plan.
Right. And I think too, on the opposite side, because the person with the baggage has to understand you got baggage and now you're going to transfer that baggage to that person.
Absolutely.
So I think it's both sides. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I do believe that love covers that.
It does, but if you have to have that conversation first. And a lot of people today don't have the conversations first. They fall in love or fall in lust. I don't know which one it is. And then, when they're together maybe 6 months, a year, and things aren't going with the way they thought they were supposed to go, they want to get out of the relationship. Well, nobody ever said it was going to be easy, but you should have talked about some of this stuff before you decided to be together. Because it could cause, it could have saved a lot of problems.
And I want to add to that. I think love is mutual respect.
Yeah.
For where each person is at in their life. And there's communication with that. Lust is a physical process.
Right.
I'm in lust with you. I love the way you smell. I love the way you touch me. I like the way your beard is glistening. I like the curvy hips. And I like the warmth of your body.
Right.
Past that, I don't know where you work. I don't know who your mama name is. That's completely lust. You have to have a common foundation where you guys are communicating and really evaluating what your love is.
That's correct.
One of my questions was about love at first sight. That was one of my questions. And it was, what's the pros and the cons? So what I heard you just say was, yes, we can have that attraction for that person, love at first sight, and you can connect with your heart, with your mind. However, there comes a point where you need to have the cold, hard conversation about what happens after life.
Right.
After all of this, this euphoria, this moment of euphoria, we have to have a discussion about where we're going if we want to go somewhere. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Absolutely.
And, I think.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I believe in this season we have a lot of people that are growing their generational wealth. They're first-time wealthy people. You have a lot of people that are first-time professionals. You have a lot of people that are doing life. And it's a fast-paced life. And we have failed to communicate with one another about what that life is supposed to look like. Nor do we even know what we want our life to look like.
Yeah.
We fail to have the conversations about what happens when we don't love anymore. Right. What happens when the honeymoon is over and I'm waking up and your breath is hot? What happens when I realize that we have to battle cancer together? What happens when I realize that the diabetes is out of control?
Right.
God forbid these things happen in marriages, but the reality to the world or to love relationships, the reality is it does.
Right. Because life happens. Right.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I agree with you that if life happens, how do we live this together?
Right.
You know, how do we do this together? And I've been married 33 years.
Oh,
I've been married
congratulations.
a long time. And we've had ups, downs, ins, outs, sideways, everything.
Mhm.
But we're still together.
Right.
Okay. And so when it started, the journey started, I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
Okay. And so living life on a lot of different levels, because I think one of the other things that also happens in a relationship is you evolve.
Yeah.
You know, it's awkward when one person, you start out together at one place, but then as life happens and you evolve, and I talk about this when I have sessions with couples, that you have to learn to evolve together.
Yeah.
You know, even when one excels more than the other at that time, doesn't mean you're not excelling together. It just means that you have to learn how to pivot together. You
Yes.
know, our bishop talked about one time, this is years ago, and it stuck with me, learning how to be able to dance in a rhythmic way, to have a rhythm to your relationship. You know,
Right.
and you have to be able to stay in sync, even when someone surpasses you in some sort of way. It could be financially, it could be academically, it could be professionally, all kinds of things can happen. But because you are together and you have to learn how to do that rhythmically and to pivot together. And so I'm hearing you say that, you know, not only in the communication, but a clear understanding that I'm not leaving you behind.
Right.
You know, I want you to join my journey, you know, our journey, because this is we together on this, you know. So whatever steps I make with you, not without you.
I think that is so profound because if we go even back to our professions, the role of the therapist, when you go into a room, you have to know what that client is needing at that point in time. I think when you and you adapt your role to what that client needs in that point in time, you use your tools for what that client needs. I think in relationships, just like you said, when the weather changes and the relationship starts changing, you have to shift. You have to be able to pivot in that relationship. So my husband is military and I have degrees. And I was a little haughty going into this relationship, like, oh Lord, we're gonna go together, grow together. He's gonna go back to school and do all this other stuff. And the Lord has shown me my husband's faith is huge. It is dynamic. And he has slowed me down for my faith to catch up with his so we can be equally yoked in that faith relationship. Never once in my life would I have really vocally tied my faith in God with my career. That was not for the beginning. Of course, God got me through my career, my education. But in this season, I'm seeing where the body of Christ is needing to be healed through these conversations and through the work that he's blessed us to be able to do. And so just like in marriage and relationships, we have to be willing to pivot when the Holy Spirit says shift.
Absolutely.
We have to be willing to humble ourselves when our mind says, oh, you better than that. But Christ is saying, I need you to be smaller so I can increase.
Right.
Same way in a marriage, you know. My husband will go to work and he will, and we've only been married 5 years. Right? Our first marriage, we were married 10 years, and we were so unequally yoked. And he was a great guy. He really was. But I didn't know me. And I didn't know what the Lord had called me to. I wrecked that whole thing. And I'm willing to say that in this season because I know God has healed me. And I'm not saying that God allowed that marriage to happen. And I know what the Bible says is you divorce, you need to stay, divorced until whatever. But God has got a second chances, third, fourth, and fifth. And when you are aligned and you are truly loving the Lord, and I think that goes back kind of full circle with self-awareness. The Bible says, know love God and love your neighbor as you love yourself. We kind of forget that last piece. We can't love anybody if we don't love ourselves. Mm-hmm. So when we come into these unions and these love relationships, I think it's very important that we know ourselves, know what God has called us to do, and then take that and love the individual the same way. Not control, not manipulate, but love. And I honor you for your 30 plus years of marriage. God, I'm like,
it comes with the price. It comes with the price. But I'm gonna say something to you, because there are a lot of single women out there, okay, who are gonna watch this, okay, and hear that, guess what? It's not over for you. Just because it didn't work the first time, there may be some, and that's what I heard you just say. It didn't work the first time, but I had to realize within myself the parts I played that was wrong in that situation. That's healing in itself. That right there is healing, okay? To be able to acknowledge the fact that I played a part. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't the relationship. It was us. We did this and we didn't make it work, okay? But this is my part. I can only talk about my part. Okay. And with that, he rewarded you. I don't look at it as, that you shouldn't marry again. I think he gave that to you. He gave you the second chance because you were able to acknowledge your part in this, and that you would take care of and be a good steward over the next thing you got.
Absolutely.
Okay, the next relationship, you'll be a good steward. And sometimes we're not a good steward over the things that God gives us. And I know I'm going off topic a little bit, but and I'm sorry, Chantel, I get I was talking to someone yesterday or the day before about money. Okay, that's the subject always with me, money. And they were talking about their situation. I said, you know what? Look at where you are. You're not who you were. Look at where you are. Stop looking. I said, and the reason you keep getting stuck in this moment is because you keep going back on what you lost. It's over. It's done. The season has passed. God has healed you. He has provided you with some other things. You need to pay attention to the new things, because if you don't, he's going to take this stuff away from you and teach you another lesson.
Right.
Okay? So sometimes we have to recognize the lessons that he's giving us. And even in these relationships, we make mistakes, we fall down, but God gives us grace, and he's sovereign to let us get back up again. Sometimes we don't get back up. We go someplace else. We do something else. We as humans, we do other things.
We get discouraged.
Right. Just to fulfill that moment of whatever. But thank God, he is a sovereign God, a forgiving God. And if we stand still, and I like what you said before, to just hear him in terms of direction and hear your way through, you will find peace. Now, I'm not talking about relationships that are abusive. I'm not talking about that. Okay. If you're in an abusive relationship, you need to get out.
Right.
Okay? You need to get out. That's what I just said. You need to get out of that relationship. Okay, and find shelter, find a place that you can be safe for you, and if you have kids, for you and your kids. Okay, that's what I'm saying. But if you're in a situation that's just not clicking, okay, seek God. He will provide. He will. And I've seen, and believe it or not, I shared with Chantel, one of my coworkers. She recently got married after her husband. They didn't have they had a great relationship, but he passed away because he was sick. And they had been married a long time. And she just decided she didn't want to get married again. Yeah. She didn't want to do this again. The Lord had something else, because he had somebody else who needed to marry her.
Right. Right.
Okay. And so we talked about this and I was so happy for her. And now she's so in love. Not that she forgot about her previous husband who passed away, but the fact that he gave her life abundantly again.
Yeah.
You know, so that when we get older, and I think sometimes people forget that when we get older, we don't want to be alone, you know, because that companionship, that relationship, and I'm not even talking about sex now, I'm talking about just having companionship, relationship in old age. You know, who was that? Not Albert Ellis. It's when he talks about the
Stages of life.
stages of change, yes, the stages of development, and he talks about the last stage. It's generational or geneational or something. It's the last one, begins with a G. And what is it?
I thought it was gerontology or something like that.
No, it begins with a G. But anyway, my point is, in that last stage, having companionship, someone to talk to you, someone to provide you with touch, that you talked about earlier, those are essential. That's why when people who've been married like 50, 60, 70 years, they last so long, is because they have that ability to still connect. And it helps part of the brain cells to stay alive. It reduces Alzheimer's and dementia, because the brain is still active, is still doing things. But when we don't allow ourselves to love anymore, just love, you know, we lose that piece. You know, I know that wasn't in my questions, but you just led me down that road, like, you know, because I know there's somebody out there watching, and somebody out there watching is wanting to know, what do I do next? What do I do next?
That is so huge. I think the most important thing that I learned, is first forgive myself. And know that you are worthy of. I still struggle with that word worthy, but God has made us worthy. But you're worthy to live an abundant life. That's a promise that has been made to us. And we have to understand what that means when we heal. You know, what does my abundant life mean? I have a really great friend who tells me, stop and think about all the little abundances in your life that God has given you. You know, we just had COVID and people died. People still have respiratory problems, you know, all these different things. They're struggling. They've lost people. But they still have the blessing of being above ground.
Yeah.
And still rebuilding their life. And so with that being said, for me, I did have to forgive myself, because we are called to do no harm to anyone.
Yes.
And then in a marriage relationship, I do believe there are certain promises that are expected, but not made, but expected. But when you stand before the pastor and they say it's to having to hold to death do you part and all this other stuff, and for some reason you just can't hold it together, you can't do it, and you walk away from the situation. Again, I agree. I wholeheartedly have to say, if you are being abused, and if someone is putting their hands on you, you got to get out of that.
That's right.
That means that you don't love yourself. You don't have value within yourself.
Because love does not hurt.
Love does not hurt. I also believe that for any reason that you separated from a marriage or relationship, that possibly could have been rekindled or built, but now there's too much water under the bridge, you still got to forgive yourself and know that there's better out there. There's more out there. And God is faithful. Absolutely.
What are the pros and cons? Oh, can y'all hear me? What are the pros and cons of wanting to be intimate, but not wanting to commit in love?
Oh, okay. So for me, intimacy is huge, 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 huge. And I don't mean that, I desire it, but I know the chemistry behind intimacy. There are some
Share
chemicals in
that,
your,
share that, share the chemistry and then tell you.
okay, let me make sure I got my,
Yes.
okay. Okay, so please forgive me, but it says on a 2002 study from the University of Albany, semen actually eases depression in the body for women. Okay, and then also it lowers blood pressure. However, in some women, it causes post severe blues or post coital coitus, post coital dysphoria.
Okay.
So you get depressed after sex. But these are chemicals that are released within the body. There are some studies that say there's a point in your sexual engagement where you just black out in some women. Now, of course, this is all case by case, but these things happen. Your body is, so much happens during sex. My grandmother used to tell us we have deposits that are made into us as women when we engage in coitus. And we carry those deposits from a man, whatever they are. And if you really think about it, we're sharing fluids and chemistry and everything during sex.
Mm-hmm.
So that's huge for me in the back of my brain at all times.
Yeah.
However, the intimate part of a person, when you want to become one and connected,
Mm-hmm.
you truly want to share all those experiences with that individual.
Yeah.
And I think that that is so profound because you said it earlier, when you grow old, you can reminisce, you can touch each other, you can have that connection, you can have that bond. And you know that after a long period of time, y'all going for broke for each other.
Mm-hmm.
Whether y'all going for broke because you have a bank account together, a mortgage, whatever, but you have established this bond, this contract. A lot of people don't like saying contracts, but you have established this unwritten contract.
Yeah.
That even without sex, that there's going to be a bond in your life forever. And my husband and I are really looking at generational and legacy and things of that nature in this season. Mm-hmm. And we all, as people, people of color, people not of color, talk about generational wealth. I think of generational wealth as well as also with what we show our children as we get old. That's wealthy, that it can sustain you as you get old and you're walking down a boardwalk holding hands at 80 years old, still in love. That's generational love. That's sustainability. Mm-hmm. Intimacy is very fleeting. After you get a certain age, it's probably the last thing you want to do after doing laundry. So I personally believe that you can distinguish the physical intimacy from the emotional intimacy. For me, I weigh the emotional intimacy so much higher than the physical intimacy. I believe my husband does as well because he likes to talk, and he is driven by the conversation. So now he's very physical. He loves the physicality of it all. But that's just icing on the cake. So you can distinguish that between that. I think young adults, because it's so new to them, and our environment is so saturated with sensual messages and sexual provocative, and how and mixing drugs and sex and and all these different partners and all this it's no longer taboo. It's no longer something that you strive to do. Right. It's an everyday thing, and the the euphoria of
Yeah.
physical engagements is lost.
Yeah.
Mhm. And I think it's a sad, but here's the thing. I think there's some plus to it. When we get to the point where we're so sex saturated
Mm.
and there's no longer any more taboo, people are going to say, what else is there? And I have to say that the only thing after all of this is Jesus.
Right.
After all of this, the only thing that brings us back together is having that unified understanding there's something greater.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus gave us the greatest love of all. Bless you. The greatest love of all.
Purpose. We're
Thank
purpose
you.
in this. Yeah. Awesome.
All right. I've heard in the past that you have to know how to play the game. So is
Mm.
love a game?
Tina says, what's love got to do? Got to do with it. I don't think love is a game. However, most people who are driven by the arousal and the infatuation, it is a game to them.
Mm-hmm.
But
People
what
make it
people
a
have,
game.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
what they have to remember in a game, there's winners and there's losers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so when you get to the end of the game, what part of the field are you going to be on? Are you going to be on the losing side or are you going to be on the winning side? So I do believe a lot of people believe that love is a game. I think love is like building a house that you plan on staying in for a long time and then handing it down to your children. Um, Love is for me, is a journey. It is a beautiful dance that we can do. The rhythm of the dance, it is beautiful. And you can always change the song and still be in the dance. You know, you can learn a new step in the dance. You know, you lose a little weight and he can dip you and swing you, or, you know, whatever floats your boat. If you want to dip him and swing him, whatever. But I don't believe that love is a game. If you choose to say it's a game, then there's always going to be winners and losers, and someone is going to wind up hurt.
I think I want to add to your statement, Jan, that because I like what you just said, but I want to add to that. I think love is intentional.
Yes.
You know, it's all about intentionality. What do you plan on doing?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I remember years ago that I was a young bride back then, and my husband got Bell palsy.
Mm-hmm.
Palsy. Am I saying right? Palsy, Bell palsy. And we didn't know what it was. And because I'm from up north. And so he had been working outside, and he woke up that morning and his whole face was twisted.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know. I thought he had a stroke.
Yeah.
I remember that one moment. I said, we're going to call a doctor because he didn't feel anything. He was fine. His face was twisted. And so I said, let me call my job and let them know I'm not coming to work. And he's like, I can go to the doctor myself. And I said, no, sweetie, I'm going with you. I'm not
Yeah.
going to work. Work is not important right now. We're going to do this together. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember that, and I remember what I felt on the inside, like, oh no, you don't conquer this alone. We conquer this together.
Okay.
And I remember when it was all said and done, he came back to me and he said, I just never seen that side of you.
Mm-hmm.
And we were a young couple back then. And so I was young in age too. So
Mm-hmm.
so I wanted to find out what this was because I thought I think he thought he had a stroke too,
Right.
but he didn't feel anything. But still, what is your intentions? You have to be clear, and having those ups and downs and ins and outs. If your intention's not right, of course you're going to back out.
Absolutely.
But if your
I,
intentions are right,
I agree with that. We have these friends that are couples. They just recently moved to Colorado. And she told me that in her marriage, her husband is her responsibility, just like she's his.
mm-hmm.
And their intention is to grow old together
Mm-hmm.
successfully and healthy, in a healthy form. So he has an allergy to the wheat. So she goes and she shops for hours just to get his food, you know, so he can be healthy as he progresses through life. I think it's so profound what you said in regards to going to the doctor. Selwyn just had his 50th year colonoscopy.
Yeah.
And so I had to pick him up. I dropped him off and picked him up, but it was only 20 minutes. So I waited for him and everything. But we do these things together, you know. A lot of times people are so quick and on the hustle and on the go. I don't think they realize that there are people that suffer. We miss moments because we're so busy.
Yeah.
Intentionality is huge. You go into it with intentionality.
I like
If it's just about the glamour, the glitz, the
Mhm.
money, the power, then it's all for the wrong thing, you know, because that will fail. You know, we had the financial market crash, we had COVID, we've had everything in these. So life is fickle.
Hmm.
But if we say we're going to be intentional on being in love, let's map that out. What does that look like to you? What does it look like to me? And let's come in the middle and make it work.
Right.
Awesome. Awesome.
All right. What are some signs that a person has fallen out of love?
Oh. Gottman. Okay, so John Gottman has a whole study on this, and it is scientific. It's a scientifically based study that people use in Gottman therapy. And so I want to make sure I get this right because I just recently started studying in depth. But he has the love maps that he goes by, and generally there's 5 bad things to 1 good thing that you have to look at in marriages. So if you have 1 good thing and you have 5 bad things, then you're falling out of love. You know, I agree with that. His study is spot on. There's so many different things, the horsemen, you know, all these, the apocalypse, whatever. But to be very specific, I think we all in marriage fall out of love.
Yeah.
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 I don't.
I was gonna say that that you know you do fall out of love, but you have to remember the reason why you fell in love with the person in the first place, and then try to re-fall in love because you don't always like that person. They go drive you crazy. They go get on your nerves, and that's normal. People don't understand that. It's normal. You go through these trials, but
I just had this couple that are just very. Oh, go ahead, please.
So I was just going to say, it's the same thing with the fact that what I said earlier about us evolving, you know, and those are the times that we fall out of love because we're evolving. And as we evolve, we're no longer in sync. You know, one of the things I remember when I was in ministry school, I remember saying to myself when one of the elders was saying, God is always talking. And I'm saying to myself, why don't I always hear him? I don't always hear him. And she said something real poignant. She didn't answer my question because I was thinking that. She said that the reason we don't hear him is because we're no longer aligned. And there are times in our lives that we're not aligned. The Bible says that God is not with us always. So there are times that he takes himself away, and there's times we take ourselves away. And so we have to seek to become realigned with him. And I think it's the same thing with the relationship. When we find out that we are no longer in step or no longer in sync, or we're pivoting in different directions, we got to check ourselves and realign or come back with that realignment, right? So that we can be in sync, because those are the times that we fall out of love. Those are the times that people look away. Those are the times that people fall short because they're no longer aligned. And it's real ridiculous to think that even for 30 years, it's impossible for us to be aligned every day for 30 years. You started off the conversation by saying, I don't want him in my face every day. Okay, that's natural. Okay, because we can't breathe. We're smothered if we do that, right? And I couldn't move and I couldn't evolve if you in my face every day. Okay, there has to become a time when you're not, and there's comes a time that we are.
Right.
We come back with intention to do something. We're planning for something. We're doing
Absolutely.
something, you know? And so I can think of so many times that I did, like we weren't working. Things weren't working out.
Mhm.
I thought about like, I need to get out of this. And I know he thought about the same thing. Okay. Like it's just, but we always came back and we always were able to talk. And honestly, I think the older we've gotten, the better it's easier to do. We don't fall out as much as we did when we were younger,
Right.
you know, and just committed to stay because we know what it looks like on the other end.
Right.
Most of us know what divorce looks like. We
Mhm.
know what being a single parent looks like from from our own individual perspectives. And we didn't want that.
Right.
We didn't want that. And so I do believe that we have to pay attention, like you said to earlier, pay attention to those cues and those signs and know that we're not arguing because he's wrong or I'm wrong. It's the fact that we're not aligned.
Right.
We need to figure out why we're not aligned.
Right. Absolutely. I do believe we're given new manna every day by God. So that means that we have to reconnect every day for sure. Working with a young couple that he was so intrigued and in love. They were in high school. He went down where she was. They moved back. Things got rough, and they were like, "We ain't doing this." I'm like, "Well, wait. Let's remember why you did it in the first place. Let's get back in sync." And that has really worked out. Lastly, really quick, the intentionality is huge, and we have to know that we're not just doing it for ourselves in this moment. It's knowing that this is a generational thing. This is a legacy. And what we do in these moments, it's not just about us. It's about all those that are around us, all those that are looking at us, all those that we are building up, you know. And if we say it's tough and we jump ship, what do we tell them? What are we telling them?
Right.
So absolutely. Intention is huge.
You brought up John Gottman's, you know, when he talks about that sound house, right? And
Yes.
give basic foundation, that helps people to start out to relook at and reevaluate, why am I here? Why are we here? What is our purpose of it? It takes apart all the things that have created all the negative stuff on the bottom, you know, and as you start to build, you're able to look at that. And I think that's really good. That we're able to look at that and look at all the things that have, and I haven't started, I'm level 2, but I haven't not yet done it with a client yet. I can't wait to start to do it with a client because I really want to be able to understand the dichotomy of what it is that tears people apart. Especially in the in minorities. Okay, and what are some of the things that takes us apart and lets us so, like, to the point that I hate you, you know, to that point.
Because we never liked the person in the first place because we jumped into the relationship for the wrong reasons. And we don't have communication. We don't know ourselves. I mean, it's a whole list.
I really strongly believe it's that self-awareness piece and that self-love. I do believe that we all have choices. I do believe that we all, as adults, make decisions that we consent to. But historically, we have been taught how to despise ourselves. And when I look at you, no matter, you know, and I see me in somewhere, I realize that there's something wrong. Because consciously, we have been taught that minorities have been taught, we're not a monolith, but many minorities have been taught that there's something wrong. And we always look for that elephant in the room and still, instead of looking for the greatness inside, you know, we struggle with that.
I like that.
I have a lot of friends that talk about the cup being half full and half empty. There are a lot of people that can look at the cup and say, "Ooh, that's half full." I can do 100 million things with that cup. Some people who say the cup is half empty
Mhm,
and they just throw the cup away.
mhm.
I think in a lot of minority families and cultures, we've decided to throw ourselves away.
Mm.
We don't build each other up. I love what you and Chantel do because I see you. You know, and Chantel is the one who's like always like, girl, stop. And she sees me. And it's so profound in this season that I'm seeing without having to perform
Mm.
or intentionally perform.
Mhm, mhm.
That I can just be seen for who I am and people knowing me that there's deeper, there's more. And we need more of that in our community,
Yeah.
in minority communities. You know, Asian communities have the same stigma, but the thing about it is they're based on respect and community.
Yeah.
So that's a huge difference. And not and they the perception is they will achieve no matter what.
No matter what. Mhm, mhm.
They pull each other up. In our community, we're like crabs in a bucket, pulling each other down. That's my opinion.
Well, I'm going to say this. I think we're in a season
Oh,
where
sure.
women are coming together
Yeah.
and saying no more,
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
We
more.
need everyone, not just the women. We need the men. We need the men too, because the women are always
Absolutely.
pulling it together. We need the men to be pull it together and show up, I think. That's my opinion. Y'all don't have to agree with it. And I'm talking to the audience, not, but I'm just saying, that's my opinion.
Right. Right. I was thinking because this is again a little off topic again, but still in the same vein. I think we learn generationally some of the nuances that our families bring with them. My parents came from the South, and they came during segregation. My grandmother, born in 1912, there was a way they did things, even though family was big, family was important. They were taught that. But I think when people step away from um, the nucleus, which was the South for my parents, when you step away from that and they've journeyed up to New York, something was lost in that transition, okay? And taking on new cultures, new ways of thinking, new things, okay? And because when I would hear my grandmother say things to me about uh, life, love, money, stuff like that, it was different from what I was in my house,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Although that was my mother's mother,
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing happened with my paternal grandmother. She was about family. It was about family,
Right.
but I didn't see that with the parents that I got. I didn't see the same thing. Okay. And I had to make choices, and that's one of the things that I think is sustainable in terms of my marriage, because I was like, I don't want to do divorce. I don't want to do all that. Okay. I want to stick it out. Okay. And I came in with that mentality. He came in with that mentality. But I do know that sometimes when we don't understand finances, I think Chantel and I did a piece on finances. What happens is people, they don't understand that. They don't like to share information. When people don't even know, they don't like to share. And that's one of the things that she and I talked about early on, in terms of being able to be a platform to share information with people who don't talk about certain things. So there's a generation, and I think it's mine, that came in the 60s that were born. I was born in the 60s, was raised in the 70s. I was a little kid in the 60s, but I was raised in the 70s where I can really know what was going on. And I just think that that whole era of just being free, coming out of that segregation stuff, and people just not or just let me just get mine and not share nothing with anybody else. And so a lot of times I think that we don't share that. So we don't talk about family. We don't talk about love. We definitely don't talk about money, especially when somebody has, and I don't know if it's a crab, I don't take it as a crab in a barrel of crabs, but I do think it's like, I got mine. So you need to go get yours. That's the mentality I look at. And just the same thing with the family and the relationships. You're very open about your relationship, which is very good. You're very transparent. And a lot of people wouldn't be, to give someone else hope. You see what I'm saying? To give someone else hope. I shared with somebody about, I'm a Dave Ramsey fan. I always say it. I do Dave Ramsey. And so we had a segment on Dave on talking about finances. And I'm a believer, but I don't push it on people, because I notice that when I do talk about it, I get she's bragging. No, I'm not bragging, I'm sharing. I'm sharing. And so we got to be careful sometimes, even in your transparency, someone might be like, she just want to talk about herself. No, she's sharing that you can get this too. And I think sometimes we get lost in that translation of, I'm sharing with you to build you. I'm not bragging. I'm not throwing shade. I'm actually trying to help you. So to me, it's caught in that betwixt and between, like, what do you do? Because people don't want to learn. They're comfortable being upset or being broke or being lonely.
And I totally agree. But I think it's misery as well. And the lack of hope.
Lack of hope.
Mm-hmm. And we don't teach hope anymore.
No.
We don't teach people to dream anymore.
Yeah.
We don't tell people the possibilities. Now, Esther Perel, which is very far-fetched in our field, but she talks about what else is there. And she also talks about, in marriages, you can always have a second marriage in the original marriage. You can redefine your marriage.
Yeah.
And you can redefine what love looks like.
Mm-hmm.
We get stuck. So I grew up in Texas in the Panhandle, and I was told at 25, you are who you are, and there is no changing.
Wow.
So I held on to that for a long period of time, because I valued education as a young girl, because I was like, this is the only way out,
Mm-hmm.
even though it wasn't the best education. However, I had nobody that looked like me. And I wasn't the prettiest girl, So I was like, well, I'm just stuck. I gotta do what I have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Not until I went into the helping profession. So my bachelor's in sociology and my master's in marriage and family therapy, did I realize that we all need each other to grow and excel.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that I learned, I need to be giving it back.
Mm-hmm.
This is not just for me. And to my death, I need to be pouring out.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think I got it all together. I have battled depression. I have battled suicide ideations. I have battled all these different things. But I found out a better way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if I can find out a better way, everybody else can as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I want that for everyone. But I can want it for people, but they have to decide, do they want it for themselves?
Yeah.
And then in that we can work together and say, we can do this. Chantel, she reaches out to me all the time because I'm a consummate professional. And what that means, I'm safe. I do everything by the book. That means there's no question. And if you come at me, guess what? This is what it's saying. I'm a consummate professional. However, in this season, we got to take the risk. Esther said, if I perish, I perish.
Mm-hmm.
But this is not for me. This is for the legacy.
Mm-hmm.
So I am in the season, if I perish, I perish. We have to go for it. And we have to go for it together. And then we have to give back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm reaching. I'm like, so I honor you guys again. Chantel, I honor you with all God's grace and love. You know I do, girl.
I know. I have one last question for you, and then we're gonna wrap up after this question. So it's Valentine's weekend, of course. What are some ideas or suggestions that you may have for creating an atmosphere of love?
Okay.
Help them out.
So I just love this because we have the Love Nudge app, which is about the 5 love languages. You can download it. It's free on Google Play or and Apple. But we set it up with that Love Nudge app. He asked me a series of questions. He asked me where my day is going. And so you can create, social media is good. It's connection. Social apps are connection. So create an atmosphere before you even get there. We go to church, we're supposed to create the atmosphere even before we get into the church house. So start creating the atmosphere now with your loved one. Dropping hints, little love notes, a few petals on the bed before the 14th. It should be all year long, but before the 14th. And then listen to what your partner wants and give surprises, For me in this season, I'm not a gift. I'm not one who wants a lot of gifts. But I will make a tent in the middle of my living room and get those little fake candles and put some pillows in there and some petals. And we make a camp out, For those who are very advantageous, there are a lot of local parks that you can go and have a picnic. Get your favorite cheese, fruits, wine, 6 feet distance from everybody else. And have a picnic. But the most important thing is to be intentional and ask your loved one what their list is, what they want. Yeah. Communication in this season is huge.
Yeah.
Yes. So I want to thank you, Jan, for coming on and talking about love with us. We enjoyed you. And do you have anything else to say, Shirley?
You mentioned we had some comments.
Well, Echo, he said the 5-to-1 ratio helps to see more positive than negatives. Hypervigilance from generational trauma. And of course, we'll have to get along to pull through. So no questions, just comments.
Comment, yeah. That's awesome. Thank you, Dr. Echo.
Yeah, thank you, Echo. And thank you, Dr. Elder Cortez, for sharing the program. I appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying it.
Yes. Jan, girl, this is my first time meeting you, but I think we're kindred spirits at heart. Yes, we are. We are kindred spirits at heart. And I just want to say thank you for all that you shared today. You have definitely pulled at my own heart and my own thoughts. And so that makes it awesome. I'm happy that we were able to share. I hope we're able to share again soon, that you'll be able to come out and visit us again, because marriage and family is my thing too. And I just love it. I'm a couples therapist as well. And so I love talking about couples and situations. So we may do this again, right, Chantel? And as we dive into further, you guys are A's already. I'm trying to get mine, girl. I'm trying to get mine. And so I ain't got no hate. I got love for you. I'm an LPC, but I'm trying to get my my LFMT. And but I love couples, and that's what I specialize in now is couples. And so we have a lot to dialogue about. To talk about, and we are all Gottman lovers as well, and so we'll be able to talk more about that soon enough. I hope people are listening to this this broadcast, especially before Valentine's Day. I think a lot of the information that came out, we talked about a lot of topics. We talked about falling in love. We talked about being in love. We talked about when love doesn't work. Talked about how it should start. We talked about how we should continue in it, and I think it's awesome today. The conversation was awesome with Jen and Chantel. And so please, if you are listening to this, check it out again. If you want to hear it again, we're going to be on YouTube. And so it'll be posted on our YouTube channel, and you can listen to this and a whole bunch of other broadcasts that we have done as well. But this one is poignant, especially at this season and this time. Thank you again, Jen. I appreciate you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you,
Be
Jandra.
blessed.
I'll talk to you later.
Yes.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.